What I'd like to discuss next is field validation rules. The table that you see on the screen that we've been creating doesn't have any data in it yet. So what I'd like you to do is save this table because we're going to use it later on. Close this table, and Access will ask if you want to save it. This time I'd like you to click Yes. Once you click Yes, you'll see the Save As dialog box. Access is currently going to save this table as Table 1 unless you decide to change the name. I'd like you to change this name. So click inside this box, backspace, and I'd like you to type Employee Sample. Next, click OK. You'll see this message that says there is no primary key defined. We're going to talk about primary keys later in this lesson, so for now, just click No. Access saves the table, and if you notice in the navigation pane, we have a new table object called Employee Sample. All of your hard work is saved. You've seen how to create new fields and assign data types, but how can you add extra checks into your table design to ensure that only good data goes in? By good, I mean data that is plausible. When you or someone else is adding data to your table, you could easily make a mistake. For example, we have a pay rate field in that table we just created. We'll use that to store the employee's pay per hour. It's quite possible you could enter a value that is way too high, say $10,000 per hour, or too low, perhaps a pay rate below the minimum wage rate or even a negative rate. There are some exceptions, but in most cases, Access will just gladly accept whatever data you want to add to the table. To help control the data going into your fields, you can add field validation rules. In general, a field validation expression consists of an operator and a comparison value. If you do not include an operator, Access assumes you want an equals comparison. You can specify multiple comparisons separated by the Boolean operators OR and AND. What I'd like you to do now is open the table Employees by double-clicking on it. This opens it in Datasheet view. I'd like you to now scroll over until you come to the birth date field. Click inside the first birth date field. Notice that the birth date is 4/15/1974. What I'd like you to do now is click the calendar icon to bring up the date picker and select Today. Press the Tab key and notice what comes up on the screen. You haven't been born yet. Please recheck the data you entered. What I've done is created a field validation rule on the birthday field. If I click OK and try and tab off again, Access continues to show this message. It will not let me save this record until I change it to a value that meets the criteria for the field validation rule. If you want to keep the existing value, press the Escape key now. What I'd like you to do now is to switch in Design View for this particular table. So right-click on the tab and select Design View. And let's take a look at the field validation that I created. You're going to have to scroll down until you come to the birth date field. Click on there and notice the validation rule on the General tab here of the field properties. I have a less than, date, and then parentheses. The date parentheses is a built-in date function within Access that will return the current date based on the date of your Windows operating system. Because I have less than, what Access does is check to see if the value is less than today's date. The validation text I have written says, "You haven't been born yet. Please recheck the date you entered." As you recall, this is the message that you saw displayed on the screen. I strongly suggest if you apply a validation rule, you also define a validation text. Otherwise, you're going to get a cryptic error message from Access, and it's going to be very hard for your users to figure out what they did wrong. If you have something legible to them, such as the message I created, it's going to be easier for your user to understand where their mistake was made and how they can correct it. You probably won't be able to add field validation rules to all the fields in your tables, but during the initial stages of setting up your tables, be thinking about possible rules you could add to help maintain data integrity in your database. Remember the table design worksheet that we worked on? This could be something that you add to each of the fields So you could add an additional column to the spreadsheet that I created, and you could name it Field Validations. So as you're thinking about the attributes and entities of your database design, you might be thinking about some field validation rules that you can use if you're going to share this database with other users.